The Shanghai Cooperation Organisation in Tianjin fiercely condemned terrorism in all forms and directly naming the April 22nd Pahalgam attack in its landmark declaration. The 10-member Tianjin declaration demanded an immediate halt to cross-border movement of terrorists. On display was the bonhomie between the Indian Prime Minister and the Russian President. Narendra Modi took a ride in President Vladimir Putin's armored Aurus limousine, a rare gesture highlighting rock-solid India-Russia ties despite global headwinds. The SCO summit held in the shadow, and on the summit's sidelines, Modi and Putin, walking hand in hand towards China's Xi Jinping, displayed a trinity of statecraft. All three leaders, surrounded by interpreters, paused, smiled, and discussed the wild shifting balance, an image the West is watching and interpreting closely. With the war raging on, Putin insisted root causes must be tackled for any lasting settlement, while slamming the eastwards expansion of the NATO. Chinese President Xi Jinping lashed out at bullying behavior from certain countries, an unmistakable swipe at the US. Xi warned that the global situation is growing ever more chaotic and intertwined, urging member states to pursue fairness and stability. Our assistant editor for foreign affairs, Thitan Subol, is in Tianjin. Will Denslow is our correspondent in Brussels. And from Spain is Mr. Daniel Lacal, who is an author and also chief economist at Tresis. Gentlemen, thanks for your time. Denslow, I will start with you. What's the reaction from Europe on the SCO declaration on terrorism and President Xi's condemnation of the US in regards to being bullied by Trump with tariffs?
Well, it's certainly a significant juncture, considering the fact that we've seen plenty of hopes, both in Washington and here in Brussels, that the likes of India and China will be able to use their leverage to try and exert pressure on Russia's President Vladimir Putin, especially when it comes to the war of aggression in Ukraine. We've seen here in Brussels that both Indian and Chinese entities have been involved to varying degrees in recent sanctions on Russia to try and stem the flow, the cash flow for Russia as part of the ongoing war. So there are certainly hopes, though, that what we could see from a tangible perspective would be for the likes of India and China to instead use that influence and to try and force Russia to the negotiating table. So the fact that we can see these three leaders smiling, shaking hands, will certainly be a huge sign of caution for the West, and perhaps that sign that as global trade tensions continue to persist, perhaps, and there has been plenty of speculation that these trade policies have maybe pushed the likes of India and China closer to Moscow's orbit at a time where they were certainly hoping for the opposite, and to see the likes of New Delhi and Beijing be more of allies to try and isolate Moscow increasingly on the global stage.
Denslow, I'll come back to you. Mr. Lacal, the Chinese president managed to host over 20 leaders in China, including Russia's Putin, and India and China are on the verge of mending the ribbon. I just want your view on the biggest takeaway for you from the summit.
Well, the biggest takeaway, unfortunately, is that China, Russia, and India continue to be intertwined very aggressively, no? And I think that the calls for cooperation and balance, etc., seem rather surprising considering the support for the Russian regime. And I think it's the problem of this summit is that it has been an incredible boost to Mr. Putin in the middle of a situation as dramatic as the Ukraine war. So I think that the summit could have been quite significant if there were messages about restoring peace and about stopping this war. Unfortunately, what we have seen is almost an exercise of public relations that has to support Mr. Putin, and that is unfortunate.
Mr. Lakal, I'll come back to you. Denslow, coming back to you, President Macron had given Putin until this Monday to have a peace agreement. If not, sanctions will kick in. Putin has obviously ignored that deadline. What's the word on the streets of Brussels on that?
Well, there's been plenty of diplomacy and diplomatic efforts over the past few days, both here in Brussels and in Denmark, where on Friday defence ministers were convening. On Saturday it was the turn of foreign ministers to discuss this 19th round of sanctions on Moscow that has been in the works. And also Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission President, has been on a tour of 7 EU member states that are on the eastern flank bordering either Russia or Russia's long-term ally Belarus. Now, her visit comes as she is really trying to ram home that point that as well as putting pressure on Moscow when it comes to sanctions, more must be done to boost both Ukraine and Europe at large's defence capabilities, defence spending. Of course, we know this incident has come to light of Bulgaria alleging that Russia was behind a GPS jamming of von der Leyen's flight to Bulgaria on Sunday. Russia has denied involvement, but the EU says that this only strengthens the cause to boost defence capabilities faced with Russia and Russia's president, who von der Leyen describes as a predator.
All right. Our assistant editor for Foreign Affairs, Sidhant Sibol, is in Tianjin. Sidhant, just give me a moment. I'll come back to you. Mr. Lakal, Putin accused the West of starting the war in Ukraine in Tianjin. What do you make of his statement?
Well, it's ludicrous, isn't it? No, the evidence is pretty clear that the aggression against Ukraine has been forced upon by Russia, and that Mr. Putin's strategy has always been to blame somebody else when at the same time what he was doing was actually the opposite of what one would expect from a leader that says that is wanting peace. No, I think in any case the situation right now is quite significant. We have just learned that the Russian economy is going to be basically flat in 2025. Inflation is more than 9%, and that's the official number. And obviously the economy has been dragged into being an economy of war. So I think that what Mr. Putin needs to do is to sit down and reach a negotiation, which is what everybody is expecting of him, instead of excuses.
Sidhant, finally to you. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has departed from China. Now the focus shifts to the Victory Day parade, which is being held on the 3rd of September. Putin has stayed back. Is there an Indian delegation that will be attending it, or what's the word on that?
Well, thank you for finally coming to me. But the view from Tianjin is that the West remains tone deaf to the crisis that plagues a global South and concerns of the global South. Many would perhaps ask questions to the West, both to Brussels and Washington. Where was the commentary coming from them when it comes to the terror attack which happened in India? In fact, Donald Trump was hosting Field Marshal Munir and trying to hyphenate India and Pakistan in many ways, which is of course a no-go area for New Delhi. And it's from Tianjin, the view is that West essentially believes that its problems should be the problem of the entire world. Now, here in Tianjin, we saw the global South coming together and discussing their own problems and their own concerns. Of course, India was a country that has been saying that it is the leader of the global South. And in many ways, in the past as well, it has put the concerns of the global South at the high table. But coming to your question, we know that there will be a big parade which is going to happen. India is not going to participate in that. Primarily, the reason is Japan. We know that India has a close relationship with Japan, and this is a parade that basically is related to something that obviously the Japanese are not very happy about. Now, what is the big message that perhaps the West might be missing is that the Indian Prime Minister came to China from Japan. He was on a visit to Japan for the annual summit. And in the annual summit, the focus was on increasing the cooperation, particularly when it comes to defense. So there are several nuances of the conversation, and of course the visit of the Indian Prime Minister to China, and of course the SCO as well. While there might be suspicion when it comes to SCO for the West, it might be seen as a very anti-Western grouping. But remember, the feeling that most of the global South and India today shares is a very unreliable West.
All right. Sidhan Subol, Will Denslow, and Mr. Daniel Lakal. Gentlemen, thank you.